Are you ready?
Born ready, bro.
Are you excited?
Yeah, of course.
I have to ask these questions so you get hype, so you start feeling the
Mm,
podcast energy.
yeah, let's go.
No, I'm just taking the piss. Yeah.
About tragedy.
Hey everyone, welcome to our episode with Mubarak. Mubarak is our producer, so we thought we'd have this episode where we introduce him to you guys and let him share his story. So, welcome Mubarak. What do you have for us today?
Thank you, Emeka. It's been so refreshing working with you and Ben on the podcast. I appreciate what you guys have done on season one. And I have to shout out Daniel, my friend from long time. He was talking to me because he moved to Australia, yeah, and he was talking to me about
Mm.
the friends he made, and because I was like, I hope you've met Nigerians over there. How is it for you? Are you settling in well? Blah blah blah. Think you asked your friend who moved to a new place. So he was like, yeah, he met a Nigerian and that he plays football. He shares a lot of similarities with myself, and I was like, oh, that would be nice. Like he's like, you need to meet this guy. I was like, okay, cool. Let me meet him then, because and then I discovered that we were actually already following each other on Instagram. That was a bit of a coincidence, wasn't it? And
Mm.
yeah, it's just been great so far, just to be able to join you guys on a journey that I appreciate, because you're talking about mental health for men, um just everything concerning men, and I think that's very very important for not just men but for the world at large, because it's not just men in the end, because it affects women as well. Some people might have the perception this is a podcast for just men, but I think women should also plug in, because in the end, men also affect society in various different ways. Because every woman has a husband, a brother, boyfriend, whatever it is, a friend. So I think this is a podcast that's not just about men; it also affects the women folks as well. And yeah, that's why I'm just so excited to be on this journey with you guys.
Mm. Yeah, I appreciate that. I love what you said there as well because that's definitely what we look at on this podcast as well is how can we impact men to be better leaders in society, and obviously that includes women as well. And so yeah, we are called the Modern Day Man podcast, and we do focus on talking about men, but it's really how can men step into better leadership roles, because we realize that in today's day and age a lot of men are failing as leaders, as role models for the next generation. And it's not that we're trying to be role models or trying to be leaders within
Mm,
other people's communities and whatever. We're trying to build our own community and help people who are struggling, in the early years of learning about what it is to be a man and what it is a man can be, and some people might say should be, but we're all about embracing yourself and encouraging people to be positive individuals within society. So yeah, I like the fact that you have that vision as well, because that's very much what we are looking to do, and the people we're looking to target is very much young men.
mm. For me, it's always been about where I can express my passion, because I have a burning passion for, because this when I was in uni, yeah, I joined the radio, and it was my passion for, if I say the media, that would be like a bit controversial, because the media is so controversial and I don't want to be too involved with mainstream media, but you get how I mean. I want
Mm.
to be involved with um transmitting information, helping society in my own little way. And I felt like being part of the radio at that point would have helped me connect more with my society. And then I joined. At first, I did not know what I wanted to do. I just wanted to be on radio. I just wanted to talk. I just wanted to have a platform to express myself. And when I got there, I remember being asked if I remember being asked what I wanted to do. Yeah, and I was
Mm.
standing there for like a minute, just wondering what it is I want to do. But in the end, I figured it out, because I saw other guys talking football, and I felt like, yeah, this is something I could do, because I've always had a passion for the sport. And when I was younger, I used to play football like I was crazy. I'm still crazy about the game, but not on the playing side though. But I think we share that similarity. And yeah, I
Mm,
started talking football, and it was a rewarding experience because that opportunity gave me platforms where I was able to connect with people who I only saw on TV, people who I did not think it was realistic to speak with. You get me? So yeah, like
yeah.
one of the interviews we had, actually the biggest one was um Agahoa. He scored for Nigeria at the World Cup in 2002, and it
Mm,
was his birthday. And I texted him. I was like, "Yeah, happy birthday, legend. Blah blah blah. I'd love to have you on my radio. You know, young chap, just excited about having that opportunity, and I wanted to do everything in my power just to get the platform going." And he was glad to do it. I
mm,
was I was so excited. I was gassed when I spoke to my team about it. Everybody was excited. Everyone was like, "How did you get that done?" Because he's a big fish. Like, and yeah, we got that done. I was nervous as fuck before. Can I swear on this podcast?
it's too late, man. You've already dived. Can't even think. You've already
Yeah, sorry
dived
for
into
that.
that deep end, so
Sorry,
you might as
sorry for
well.
that language. Yeah, but I remember being very nervous before the interview, but we got to do it, and I was nervous, and I did it nervous because I admitted to myself that I was actually nervous. And in the end, I guess we did a great job, and it was a good thing for our society to be able to connect with him because we had people who were able to call in and actually ask him direct questions, and I felt rewarded for that because I actually was able to give football fans a platform for them to connect with someone that I also revere. You get how I mean? Because I know what it means to them
Mm,
to be able to speak to somebody like that. So it might be small, but I felt really, really good within myself. I had a good night's sleep that night.
yeah, but that's the thing. I think too often we look at some of our own achievements and downplay them. I think
Mm.
sometimes we think that we've done something and that necessarily hasn't impacted people, but I think we really have to understand that okay, we should be proud of what we've done. We should be proud of how we've helped people and the things we are doing, they can have impact on people even in the future. So it might not even have the desired impact today, but stay the course and keep doing what you're doing. Unfortunately, I do have to bring up because you did talk about football. I do have to sadly say that we said we're similar in football, but sadly you support a terrible team. So I mean that's
No,
one
I
thing.
support the best team
We're
in the
not
world,
similar
bro.
either.
We are the best team in the world. We've
Who?
got the best
Manchester? You don't
fan
support
base.
United,
Why would you
huh?
support United? Why would you be a
Okay,
Manchester
firstly,
United fan? You guys stand on your legend, but that story for another day. Go on.
I'll tell you how I started supporting Man United.
Go
So
on.
when I was younger, I used to like football a lot, and my dad supported Arsenal, so I used to watch Arsenal a bit. But it was really when I was about 7 or 8. I had a friend when I was living in the Middle East. I was living in Oman, and we'd got there because my dad was in the Navy, right? And so we were posted there. And I had this really good friend called Fermi, a Nigerian guy, and we were just watching Man United together. And we just were like, you know what? Actually, we really love this team. Like, we really love these guys, the way they play, the passion. I was gonna say it in the Jose Mourinho voice, but then like last minute, I decided, you know what? Maybe that's not a good idea. The passion, the drive. No, anyway. Uh, yeah. So I just started supporting Man United, and from there. But turns out this guy, my friend, man, he doesn't even support United anymore. He supports Tottenham. So I'm here by myself struggling, and he's enjoying Tottenham, knowing that okay, they're not a good team, but they're progressing towards a good place. But yeah, me, you have to stay. Once you pick your club, you have to stay loyal, even through the bad times. But we all know that Manchester United is a much better club than Liverpool has ever been. So it's like, you know, it's fine. I know that we'll
Your
take some
friend
bad
saw
years,
the
but we'll get.
light.
Hmm?
Fermi saw the light. He saw the light, then
Oh
he left
God!
because United is a very toxic club, bro. You guys are a very
You know what
toxic
I'm
club,
so Oh my gosh. You know what I'm so mad about? The fact you guys signed Cody Gakpo. That really tore my heart.
bro. I woke up today thinking about Cody Gakpo. That's how excited I am about the deal. Because let's not make this a football podcast. Like, apologies for everyone who's not a football fan now, but we're both very, very huge on football, and I think we need to do justice to that. Cody Gakpo, I think he's one of the most exciting young stars in football at the moment. And for Liverpool, like, he rejected Man United to join Liverpool, and that tells you something. If you're arguing, let's just let that be the judge of the situation where the right
No,
club is right now for you as a young star trying
he
to
wanted
make
to
it at
come to
football.
United. I'll tell you what the
Why didn't
painful
he
thing
go
about
to
that
United then?
whole, because we didn't make a bid. We didn't get our acting order. That's why.
Nah, you actually
But
did.
that transfer was
You
so
know, actually
painful.
did. He
Hmm?
turned you guys down, bro.
No, he didn't. We didn't actually make a formal bid.
Yes.
Maybe I'm wrong, but as far as I'm aware, that's what I heard. But the thing is, like that I got a notification saying that Liverpool were close to signing him. And I was like, calm. I was talking to my brother, not my brother, my cousin, about Eden Hazard and what happened with him. So obviously, I don't live in the UK anymore, and for those that don't know, currently I'm visiting the UK, right? And the last time I was living in the UK, I went to Wembley to go watch England versus Belgium,
Mm.
and that was the summer where Eden Hazard was not in the Premier League, and there were rumors that he was coming to United. And I was like getting so gassed. I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, this guy's coming to United, whatever. Boom. Obviously, we know what happened. He went to Chelsea, right? I told my cousin that, and I said, it'll be so painful if that happened with Gakpo. Literally 2 minutes after I said that, it was confirmed.
Bro, that whole deal, that whole everything about that deal just reminded me about how we got Fabinho. That's how club moves, bro. Real G's move in
Mm,
silence like lasagna. We don't have to make too much noise.
mm,
So,
mm,
like, I got the notification as well. I saw on Twitter Fabrizio Romano tweeted about it. Liverpool were in advance stuff, blah blah blah. I was like, wait a minute. Where's this coming from? If Fabrizio is tweeting, then it's true. Then I saw David Einstein tweet about it as well, and I was like, wow, this is actually really happening. And in less than 2 hours, was it even up to 2 hours? Then it was confirmed that
it was
Liverpool
quick.
actually signed him.
It
Yeah,
was
it was
very,
it
very
was
quick.
real
I
quick.
was like, wow. And
So,
that
like,
segues into what we talk about on their podcast. We talk about, take
move in
actions, try and
silence,
do the right things. A lot of these principles that we see in football translate to how
real
we
life.
can behave in society. Because for example, we all know, okay, this is me now dissing Man United, which is quite painful for me to do, but we all know like people in public who move quite loudly and whatever, and you think they're getting certain results or whatever. But what we kind of encourage people to do is, and what our other guests have done as well, is kind of just, when we talk about even Kieran, we talk about Joey, we talk about Dylan, and maybe they didn't all say it directly, but a lot of those guys have just moved in their own lane, moved in their own silence, and just achieved results rather than publicly broadcasting all the time. Okay, this is what they're on, and this is what they're trying to do. I think it's really important that we as young men realize that, okay, everyone else might be doing one thing, but I actually can now choose what I want to do and go in my own direction without needing to always have so much attention on me and everything, and realize that me advancing myself and working on things for myself can help me improve as a person, which will then improve my impact on society, and I will then reap some natural rewards from that improvement that I'm bringing to society. So it's a cyclical thing where there's benefit for everyone involved. Obviously, the more you're able to do within your life, the more you're able to help out your family, your parents, your brother, your sister, your kids, and whatever. It's really important that we as young men work hard towards the things that we want to achieve.
and that got me thinking. Like, announcing your moves before you actually make them. That could be a very, very, very dangerous trap for you as a young man. It puts you under undue pressure. Um, I remember hearing Whiskey speaking about something like this. I'm sure you know Whiskey.
Mm.
Big, one of the biggest Afrobeat artists out of Nigeria, out of Africa right now. And he was speaking about, because people always complain about him um, not being very active on social media. Yeah. And he was talking about how he doesn't like to put himself under undue pressure. He would rather go behind closed doors, do his homework, and then bang in your face, he has the album out. And that's something I've been trying to incorporate into my own life as well. Because when I'm following football, when I'm following music, because these are the two things that mean so much to me. Like I'm so passionate about football and music in various ways, and that's why there is a similarity with us as well. Like even though I don't play football or sing, I feel like I have a good ear for music and good eye for football as well. So when I'm looking at football, like from an early age, I've tried to always look at them as individuals as well, because that's the difference with that's the advantage we have with this generation, because we have social media now. You're able to actually see the lifestyles of these um sports stars or music stars or whatever it is, whoever it is that you idolize or that you follow. You're actually able to see how they approach life, and that's one rewarding thing about social media. It has a lot of disadvantages, but that's the good side. You actually see how they navigate through life, and that also helps you. If you have a sharp eye for information, then that helps you actually learn from them in a deeper way. Because if you want to flash back to the 90s, for instance, I wasn't around at that point, but I would imagine the only opportunity our dads and our uncles had at that point to actually have contact with the stars was when they were releasing music, for instance, or when they were playing football. But now on Instagram, you know who Cristiano Ronaldo's mom is just by following him on social media. So that's something we should actually really, really take huge advantage of social media, because like the older generation like to, okay, not all of them now, but there is a community of people who've come before us who feel like social media is a negative for society. I don't think so. I think it's definitely a positive, because without social media, this wouldn't be happening right now. I wouldn't know who Emeka is, Emeka in Australia or in London. I wouldn't know because I'm right here in Lagos. There's no way we'd be able to connect, you know. So I would like for young men to actually recognize the power of social media, for us to actually recognize that we actually have a lot of power in our hands, and we can actually do a lot with that. Because whether it be music you do, whether it be football, whatever it is that you're talented at, you could actually film yourself, or just make the world know about what you do, you know. Like it's very very important, and I think we should actually reap the benefits of social media in that regard. Because like way before now, it was television, and before you could get into television back in the days, like you know how much hard work you needed to put into it. Not saying it's not hard work still now, but I think it's a lot easier, and we just need to be very smart as young men for us to actually reap the benefits of social media in society.
Mm. I think what you said there is quite interesting because I'm of the belief that humans and the tools we use are neither good or bad, if that makes sense, right? Like we both have the capacity for good and we both have the capacity for evil, right? I worded that wrong, but everyone knows what I mean, right? So in the same way that you've drawn out there that a lot of older generation they look at social media as being a bad thing, you look at it as being a good thing. I definitely understand what you're saying there, and I think it's not really about the tool itself, but how the tool is used, right? Because what you've drawn out there is your perspective, and so the way you're looking at this tool is okay. I want to use this to really reach out to people that I haven't or wouldn't have been able to get in contact with before, to kind of break boundaries and also learn things about people at a deeper level in terms of okay, now I can see Ronaldo, his family, and how he interacts with his family. I can learn about the certain way he carries himself when it comes to even eating food or relating with his friends, etc., etc., and some of these deeper kind of not necessarily masculine, but male, like the kind of male gaze, like the things we're looking for as men when we're looking at, okay, how can I be as a man? We can kind of learn these things from social media, but I think we also need to, it's kind of what Dylan talked about as well. We need to know the balance of that and understand, okay, when am I consuming this too much? And when am I looking for these things too much? Because at the end of the day as well, and this is also what Dylan talked about, which I really love that he talked about, is we need to give ourselves space to make mistakes. And so if we're always looking at the perfection of other people rather than going out and making mistakes ourselves, we then judge our own mistakes worse than they actually are, which further, disallows us room to make mistakes. And these mistakes that we make are really important. As long as you make a mistake and then learn from it, and that's exactly what Kieran was talking about as well in season 1. As long as you make a mistake and then learn from it, that's fine. That doesn't excuse the mistake you've made. And there's different types of mistakes. But if you're constantly progressing as a man and as a human each day and saying, okay, look, how can I use the things around me to better me, which is exactly what you're talking about, rather than just viewing these things as intrinsically bad? Because for example, like even the concept of a gun, me just saying the word gun, some people will have an emotional reaction, maybe because of what they've experienced before or what they think about guns. But really, in two situations, a gun can be used to shoot an innocent person, or a gun can be used to save somebody being stabbed by somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So it's not really about the tool, but it's about how that tool is used. So yeah, I see what you're saying there. I think it's really important that people kind of break that down and kind of unpack that in their own time and in their own heads.
So yeah, that's the thing, you know. Social media can be both positive and negative, and I like the fact that you
Mm,
pointed that out. You know, some people could use it for the negative aspects, and it's just important that we try to. It's not easy. It's not easy to be all positive all the time because, as you said at the start, we're not trying to come here and be like we're saints or we're some kind of superhuman beings, but
yeah.
as long as you keep thriving to be a better version of yourself, that should reflect throughout your life. You know, everything you try to do, you just try to stay on the positive side and just try to be positive always because positivity is very, very important. I think people partly underestimate the importance of staying positive because in Nigeria, it's all about staying positive. You know, the elections are coming up, and I don't want to make it all about politics, but it's just crazy. You know, like I know the government in a lot of places, people complain about the government, but here it's real. You know, it gets really, really tough. Like the way the government moves, sometimes you just wonder why people at the top are so selfish and I can just hope in the
Mm,
end because, like, I think that's the worst place to be ever for you to only be able to hope. Like, if you're unable to affect the situation, the only way they tell you, okay, the only way you are able to affect the situation is through your vote, but you're not even sure if your vote is gonna count in the end of the day because there's been there's been stories of the election being rigged, ballot boxes being stolen, like it just leaves you rattled thinking about what's the future for this country. But not trying to scare anyone, but anywhere you meet Nigerians, we are very resilient people, and I like the fact that we are actually making a positive impact in the world because a lot of Nigerian men have been able to um go past all the hurdles of coming from a place where it doesn't necessarily favor you. It's not the system is not necessarily set for you to make it as a person, but if you keep striving, there's a popular saying: if you can make it here, then you can make it anywhere in the world. And I think that rings to everywhere in the world. Like everywhere you meet Nigerians, there could be negative perceptions, like but you need to give it a second thought and actually meet these people and actually speak with them for you to totally understand what they're about and how they are able to impact society. Sometimes you don't even have to meet them. Like there's been a couple Nigerians who've been able to do very, very well in society and make you actually proud to associate yourself with being Nigerian. And that's the part I'm trying to tell, I'm trying to in a decade from now, I want some youngin to say, okay, like if he's been able to do it, then I can do it as well. I recognize it's not going to be easy. Like talk is cheap in the end, but manifestation power is also very, very strong, and that's why I'm manifesting on this podcast today. I want to be able to look at this episode in 10 years' time and say that I actually manifested these things, because I don't think success should be a surprise if you're actually putting in the graft, if you're actually making small steps every day to actually get to your destination in life, then you shouldn't be too surprised when the success happens. You're allowed to be happy, enjoy yourself, but it shouldn't be a surprise. And you should actually be powerful enough to recognize that after one success, then you can move on to achieve the next. Because a lot of people, a lot of men get stuck on success. You could achieve something today and your brain is just wired to feel like, because the human brain is actually wired to be lazy. It takes a whole lot for you to get out of that space. So yeah, as I said, man, I just want to be able to look back on this podcast one day and say, yeah, this was some manifestation for me, and I was able to actually act on some of the things that I've said on that podcast. It might not be everything, but I want to be able to, go on and achieve some of the things that I'm actually manifesting right here today.
Mm. No, I love that. I really love that. Yeah, I think it's really important that you make your goals. And it's funny because you talked about being careful about what you broadcast out there with everyone, but you also talked about, you might not be ready for the pressure in terms of other people might not be ready. And that's the thing that I want to highlight here, is that like some people are ready for the pressure of, putting their dreams out there and whatever. And everything you've been saying actually falls in line with stuff that I've learned on my journey as well, in terms of obviously when I was playing football, well, not obviously. I always say obviously for the most unobvious things. It's so stupid. Anyway, when I was playing football, we had a psychologist come in and talk to all of us. And I can't remember his name, but I remember his message. And the general consensus of his message was, don't be surprised by the results. Whether you make it as a footballer, whether you don't, whether you have a great career as a footballer or you don't, whether I always use a ballet dancer example, whether you become a ballet dancer or you don't be surprised by the results, because if you're ready to put in the work, if you're ready to do whatever it takes, then you can actualize some of the things that you want to achieve. Because, you also said, if you can make it in Nigeria, you can make it anywhere. Because the thing is, I don't think society at large is set up for people to thrive. But in the instance of Nigeria, which obviously is where I'm from, for people who don't know that as well, I'm proud to be Nigerian, proud to be British and Nigerian and Jamaican. If you don't know, now you
And
know.
Portuguese.
But pardon? Oh yeah, well yeah, I'm like 1/16 Portuguese as well. Yeah, that was a secret though. You weren't supposed to let that. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. It's fine. But Nigeria is somewhere where not only are you not set up to thrive, but you're not really set up as well to just live basic life. You don't get access to a lot of basic things, and so that's why it can make it a lot more difficult. But that same psychologist, going back to the psychologist, he also talked to us about the importance of vocalizing what you want to achieve. But you need to be prepared to take the pressure off that, if that makes sense. And that's exactly what you've talked about as well. So, it's important to only start to vocalize your dreams and whatever if you're ready for other people to hold you accountable and say, well, actually, you said you want to do this. What are you doing? It's important to say that if you really do believe that you're going to put in the work. And I think all too often people put out that energy, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, when they themselves are not sure of, one, who they are, and two, who they're trying to get to. And so they're not ready for that kind of feedback. And that stops a lot of people even in their journey. Say, for example, they want to be a musician. They're waiting until they have a polished product out there until they put out their music. But even in my journey, for example, like I'm a lot happier to share stuff that I know it's not 100% perfect, but this is the beginning of my journey. And the beginning of my journey will not define the end of my journey. Does that make sense? Like, we will look back at this now and say, okay, well, this is him when he just started. And for me, that's completely okay because I realize that even when I get to the end of where I'm trying to get to, I will not be perfect. Does that make sense? Now, we live in an era of cult of personality. So, for example, like if a lot of people who are Kendrick fans or J. Cole fans or Drake fans, they'll listen to their music and think it is perfect. But even in their music, there's imperfections. Even in their behavior, there's imperfections. And so we begin to put these people as above us and not realize that they themselves in their journeys are not perfect. And so it's quite interesting to see because, for example, like if you look at someone like Messi, who's just won the World Cup, if Messi at 12 told you he was going to win the World Cup, who on this planet would believe the guy?
Hmm.
Do you know what I mean? But now he's done it. People will be like, oh, we always saw it in him. We always saw it in him. I just find it quite fascinating how those kind of things work. And so, for example, and I've brought out that example to say that when we look back on someone's career and someone's lifetime, we often look in awe and saying, oh, yeah, actually, in this song that he put out in 2001, I can see the potential he had to why he's a big star now. But when people do it in the moment, nobody's ever thinking that. It's rare that people are thinking that. Does that make sense? So that's why I'm not so concerned with doing certain things now, because I know that when people look back on it, the whole conversation will be different. But sometimes you just have to do things in the moment and take the criticisms in the moment, take the positives in the moment. But as you said before, keep the positive, stay positive in who you are, what you're trying to do, what you're trying to achieve, and the energy that you're going to put into the thing that you're looking to bring and share with the world.
Hmm.
Hopefully that makes
Something
sense.
interesting. Something interesting you mentioned there was talking about Messi back when he was like 12 years old, and maybe if he said he wanted to win the World Cup at that point, some people might raise eyebrows and wonder how he's because he actually had hormonal issues. Like that's a guy who had to endure a lot of adversity to get to where he is right now. His parents couldn't afford his medication and they had to move to Barcelona. They had to sacrifice everything they had back at home. Was it Rosario, Buenos Aires? I'm not sure where he's from exactly, but they had to move to
Mm,
Barcelona just to ensure that their young boy could make it at football. So Messi is someone
mm,
who's been through a lot of adversity. I don't want to get into the debate of who is the GOAT right now, but Ronaldo as well has been through adversity, and I saw a video of him like a few years ago where a reporter actually asked him who the best player in the world is, and he was like, he's the best player in the world. And that takes me back to what you said about actually manifesting and actually talking up what you want to achieve in life. That a lot of people would have thought this youngster is just crazy. He's just a bit too arrogant at that point. But he knew what his goals were, and if you followed Ronaldo's career, you'd see that he's the epitome of hard work. Because that's why I'm a bit more on Ronaldo's side. I'm not really into all the debate about who's better because, like, I feel like we are blessed to be able to enjoy both of them, to be able to see both of them play football. But I think Ronaldo's aspect is something that I can relate to a bit because I don't really look at myself as someone who was born talented or some sort of wizard or something. I feel like I need to put in the graft to be able to get to where I'm at, and that's what Ronaldo has done all through his career. And I feel like I'm able to relate more to that. That's why I'm gravitating a bit more towards Ronaldo. But of course, Messi is a freak of a nature. He's a freak of a player. The way he plays football is just graceful to see. But Ronaldo's hard work just makes me gravitate more towards him. So back to what I was saying about Messi, adversity builds character, and you know, just like I was saying before, when you're watching football, when you're following music, there's a lot of lessons that you can learn from the life of these people that you can actually also apply to your life as well as a young man coming up.
Um, you said you don't want to talk about who's better, Messi or Ronaldo. I do. I do. Um, I have to because of the person you mentioned at the beginning of this podcast, Daniel. I had a conversation with Daniel the other
Uh,
day on the phone. Now, sadly, and it pains me to say this, but after this World Cup, you can't make the argument that Ronaldo is better than Messi. You
mm,
can't. It's just there's too much. There's too much. And I'm a Man United fan. Ronaldo was at my club twice. I
mm,
think it's over. I think
mm,
it's over. But talking about what you said about you feel that you weren't born with some crazy talent or whatever. I don't think that anyone is. I think that people are born with certain propensities to do certain things, but even that has to be nurtured and developed. Um, when I was at school, I actually had to write an essay on, are people naturally born as leaders, or
mm,
is leadership something that is developed within people? Now, I think that leaders are born with a natural propensity to lead, right? In
mm,
terms of, like, you might be born with some certain attributes, but even that needs to be nurtured because, for example, you have people that you can see, okay, they have some qualities it takes to lead, but maybe they abuse their power, they abuse their leadership skills, or they don't know how to manage them, they don't know how to use them, right? And so for me, example, like, I'm often in leadership positions, but what has helped me in those positions is not the fact that I feel I was born with it, but rather the fact that I've been around some great leaders. My grandfather, um, I've been mentored by people in my workplace as well. And then I've just spent a lot of time with older people, like you, Daniel, Anselm, all older than me, you know. I learned things of you guys. Got other friends who I learn things off as well. It was not necessarily a natural propensity for leadership, but rather the combination of maybe a bit of a small natural inclination, but then kind of the hard work of listening and learning from other people around me that, even other people that may not have as much of a natural propensity, you can
mm.
still take things from them. Does that make sense? And so in the case of Messi and Ronaldo, even though everyone says Messi was naturally gifted, I think that, okay, maybe he had natural ability, but even that natural ability had to be honed and had to be, and so at the end of the day, hard work does beat talent.
Of course.
And so I understand what you're saying, and I think a lot of people in your situation would agree. A lot of people generally, not in your situation, a lot of people generally would agree with you that they relate more with Ronaldo because it's clear to see in the way, like, his style of playing, whatever, he did a lot more work to try and get himself to that level. Whereas for Messi, it seems more natural, but sometimes things seem natural that aren't actually that natural, if that makes sense. In terms of, like, don't get me wrong, Messi has always been a good player, but there's gonna have to be there would have been a lot of mental refinement, there would have been a lot of physical development, and there would have been a lot of tactical development as well that he wasn't naturally born with, that has allowed him to get to that level. Do you know what I mean? So I'm trying to not disenfranchise people that feel as if they weren't born talented either, because at the end of the day, even talented people don't just have stuff handed to them, if that makes sense. I don't know, that's not what you're trying to say, but I'm just trying to clarify that for anyone listening.
Yeah, I get how you mean. You were just
Mm.
talking about how you need to nurture some aspects of yourself through your journey to becoming um a successful man, you know. And I was just thinking about the subject matter there, Messi, throughout this World Cup, because we saw a side of him we are not necessarily used to, because in the past people have said um Messi is a bit lifeless. He doesn't necessarily have an opinion. He's not someone who is expressive. You know, you don't really know Messi. But at this World Cup, I think we saw a different part of Messi. People would say he was able to channel some inner Maradona to himself, and I agree with that because we saw a cheeky side of him. We saw him taking responsibility, being the leader of the team. You know, I think his first World Cup was in 2006. Yeah, he was a youngster at that point. 2010 as
I think
well.
so. Yeah.
He wasn't a youngster in 2010, but he was still relatively very young because there was the likes of Tevez, Higuain, Milito in the squad, a lot older, who were a lot older than him. But at this point, it's a team of guys who've grown up watching Messi, who've grown up idolizing him, who want to fight for him. And he actually recognized that and he took up the responsibility upon himself to just go all out for them, and you could see that he was taking it to a whole other level. He was going out of his comfort zone in terms of how he was reacting to situations. In the game against the Netherlands, he said something in Spanish. Obviously, I don't speak Spanish, but he was saying something like Bobo, like he was saying some insultive words to the guy who scored two goals, Vegas, who scored two goals against them, and that's very uncharacteristic of Messi, And when he scored, he was like this towards Louis Van Gaal. That's not Messi, but he's able to nurture that side of him. It might not be pretty on the eye, but he had to do what he had to do just to make sure that his team was on the winning side. And I admire that aspect of him. If Messi was like this from the start, maybe more people would have liked him, but I guess he was too good over the years and he didn't feel the need to channel that cheeky side of him because in the end, everybody likes a bit of cheekiness. So yeah, it was just good to see that aspect of Messi and to see him bring that aspect and finally be able to win the World Cup. That was great. As I said, we're not trying to make this a football podcast. So let's go, bro.
Yeah. I don't know. I will say though, I wasn't too impressed with Argentina as a whole, like the way they were behaving. I think they pushed the envelope a bit too far sometimes, and I think that
You
relates
know,
to
you know what angered me the most? What annoyed me the
well,
most was seeing their goalkeeper Martinez carrying a door having the face of Mbappe, and the Argentine fans burning a picture that had Mbappe's face on it, and I was like, "What's wrong with you guys? Like, learn how to behave. You've actually won this trophy, and this is a guy who actually scored 4 goals past you guys. Because if you include the penalties as well, he actually put 4 goals past your goalkeeper. Like, why is Martinez being an asshole there? Like, it's just disgusting behavior. I don't even want to go into the political side of Argentines because okay, apologies any Argentines watching this that's not racist, but Argentina comes across as a very racist country because if you go into the history, you'd see how the country um, actually made sure it was a white population, it was a predominantly white population, and how they made sure black people were taken out of the population. That shocked me when I saw it, and that gave me a bit of mixed feelings. I always try to separate football from race or ethnicity or politics and all of that stuff, but that struck me, just knowing that they actually intentionally took black people out of the population. And I was looking at the history of Argentina as a footballing nation, and the last black player to play for them was back in like the 1920s, and that's just sad.
yeah, well, yeah. I think I think the way they were carrying themselves was very. It wasn't very sporting. There was a lot of unsportsmanship,
Yeah.
and so I think it's also important as men, as leaders, that we control our emotions, control our behavior. I'm not perfect in that. I don't think any guy is perfect in that, but I think one thing, especially when we are on such a large platform or stage, we actually teach men correct behaviors. Because, for example, like what Emmy Martinez was doing, whilst some people might see the funny side of it and whatever, it's not actually beneficial for us in society to have those things happening in terms of like, I don't think it was quite necessary to have Mbappe on a doll and be like burning him and like all that kind of stuff. If that makes sense, like it's not the message we want to spread to younger people. It's not the message that we want to spread to society as a whole. Having that level of resentment towards other people is never gonna benefit you in your life. And one thing in my life that I've tried to do is that a lot of times, when people are talking about popular culture and different sports people or musicians or whatever, when I was younger, I used to say, "Oh no, I hate that musician," or "No, I hate that one," or "I hate that one." And there's a lot of power in the emotions of love. There's a lot of power in the emotion of hate. And so what I've learned in my life is, even when I'm talking about other people, I don't hate anyone.
Mm.
I'm not holding that level of anger or resentment towards anybody in my life. Now, are there people I don't like? 100%. But to take it to a level of hate,
Mm.
that's a boundary that I'm not going to cross. And even the people I don't like, rather than constantly being around those people, I disassociate from those people. Does that make sense? So it's not even like I have to consciously carry that negativity and that energy with me. Rather, I spend time with people that I enjoy spending my time with. So I don't even need to focus on, say I'm Emmy Martinez, I don't need to focus on Mbappe at all, because he's got nothing to do with me. It's not like he has to go back to Aston Villa and play with Mbappe. It's not like there's going to be a World Cup in the next 2 years. Do you know what I mean? So I think it's really important that we as young men as well realize that even though some of these things, oh, it's funny, it's funny, it's funny, these aren't really things that we want to perpetuate in society, because we have to be careful with these things, because the things we perpetuate in society, there are always people that will take those things to an extreme, whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. For example, like we've seen with Christianity, crusaders, right? There are always people that are going to take that religion or that thing and go out and take actions that the rest of that religion doesn't agree with. We see it, for example, with Islam and ISIS. We've seen it with the Christians and crusaders. We've seen it with slave trade. We've seen it with everything, right? Just because certain things happen doesn't mean that people should just behave anyhow. But one thing we can do to prevent some of that is being more conscious of the actions we put out, because then that is setting an example of the things we encourage in our lives. Does that make sense?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. Mm. You know, you know, I was thinking about what you said the other time about, would I say racism? Maybe not racism now. I would say people not willing to accept other people just the way they are. You were speaking about accents the other time, and how people from your old school would probably laugh at a Nigerian accent. I think that's somewhere we can also improve in as a society. Just people being ignorant about. I think we should, because especially among young people, I think we should be teaching them, because I wouldn't say necessarily teaching them. That's why social media is important, because you have access to a lot of information and a lot of cultures that you probably would never have had to. Because if I'm saying they should get taught, like they're not going to get taught about their parents, because their parents are equally ignorant, if not even more ignorant, about other cultures. So that takes me back to what I said about the positive sides of social media. So everyone watching this who has the access to see through other cultures, because I could remember this is what you guys were talking about from the start of the podcast, for people around Australia being able to get access to a lot of people they probably never heard about or even never thought they would come across. I think I'm one of those people. So yeah, I think it's important for us as a younger generation because we have that information now. When we do go ahead to become parents, then we should be able to transfer those values to our kids for them to actually understand that people who are not from our culture that we might find a bit different from what we are used to. We should learn to actually respect their values and what they actually stand for. That this person doesn't sound how you expect them to sound. Because, like you said, some people were laughing at your father's accent at that point. That must have hurt you as a young child. It must have. But you know, in order for us to make sure some young kid in 50 years time or 40 years time, as the case might be, is not having to go through that situation, then we must actually pay attention to the little details, and this is part of it. We always talk about racism and how it will be difficult for it to be completely out of society. And it has to go to the households. It has to be us being very intentional about teaching our kids about these things from a very young age for them to actually understand that there's some aspects of behavior that is not acceptable in society. And people from South America, I think there's a lot of work to do in that regard because they seem very distant from other cultures. I don't know if it's about the geography or because of how far they are from other cultures, but it's just very difficult for them because Edison Cavani was calling a black man negrito on Instagram last season. And when he got fined by the FA in England, his reaction was he never knew something like that would come across as an insult to somebody because in his country it's absolutely normal for you to call a black man negrito. But in England, they're like, no, you're not allowed to say this. And that's because that's a culture that's actually been exposed to other cultures from a very long time, like longer than what Uruguayan culture or other South American cultures might be exposed to. So now that we have social media, the positive side is you have you have information all around you. This is the information age. So yeah, man, we shouldn't be having these things in society. I would excuse it right now at this moment because a lot of people might still be ignorant. But in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, I'd be very surprised if there's some kid from Australia who's like they've never heard a Nigerian accent or they've never heard somebody from the UK, for instance, because it's different the way a black British man would speak from the way a white British man would speak, for instance. I'll be very surprised
Mm.
if people from like because Australia is quite far. It's far from everywhere else in the world, so it's also part of those cultures that I would say are kind of neglected from is neglect the right word? I would say yeah, let me just use that. You get how I mean, like a bit taken away from other cultures in the world. So it's very very important for us as young people, as men and women, to recognize these things and actually add them into how we are planning to raise our kids when we actually become parents.
Yeah, 100%. I think that I really like what you mentioned about intentionality. I think in today's day and age, we live in a world where people just pretend, oh, we don't care, or it's not that deep, or all those things. And I've never really believed in any of that, because it might not have been that deep, but sometimes we don't understand the impact. And this is exactly what we began talking about. Sometimes we don't understand the impact of our actions, whether positive or negative. And the thing is, like, even in my life, for example, I might have, well, I have one very specific example I can talk about, which is I got in trouble. I didn't do something that I was supposed to do. And I was reminded about it before it happened, and I still forgot, right? And that then had a potentially negative impact on people around me. And once again, I messed up, right? But the thing is with that, the way then that is handled also has an impact on people around me and me. Does that make sense? So I think it's important that if we don't understand the impact something that we've done has had on someone, but somebody else does, it's important that we have those conversations with the people around us. For example, if I say something to you that you don't like, have
Mm,
that conversation and just have that conversation. And then we know, okay, maybe next time we don't approach it in that way. And vice
mm.
versa. If there's something that somebody else has done to me that like actually that impacted me in a bad way, I'll voice that kind of thing. And that's how we bring each other together. That's how we create intentional friendships and long lasting friendships, when we can have that platform where we talk about these things and realize that, okay, even Cavani saying that word he might have not desired that impact on someone else, but that word had an impact on someone else. And so because it has an impact, we need to then judge, is that something that we're okay with or not? Because it's not about me saying, Cavani, you can use that word or you can't use that word, but at least giving him the ability to understand the impact of his actions so that he can then make an informed decision about the person he wants to be and how he's going to impact people around him, if that makes sense. Because it's not up to me to tell Cavani what words he can and can't use from his culture, but at the same time, educating somebody about that impact then, you know, has an impact on how other people may feel and how he addresses other people. And he now has a bit more consciousness about how he's behaving, if that makes sense. Because once again, it goes back to the fact that people are neither good or bad, right? It's not like Cavani said that and meant to be a bad person. At least that's what I'm assuming here, right? But the thing is, something he did had a bad action. And now if we just talk to him about it, we can resolve that. But if we start getting angry at him, then he's getting angry at us. We're not really getting anywhere. I think it's really important that we have these conversations as conversations rather than we then decide, okay, we hate someone and now we're acting in that negative energy. So I hope people are really able to see how all these things tie together in terms of the harnessing and carrying of negative energy, and also the communication required and the understanding of impact, and how these three concepts kind of tie into each other. Because if we improve our communication, we can then reduce negative impact and then harbor less negative energy.
Your video is a bit messed up there, but yeah, it's important for us to actually really take these things into cognizance, because as I said before, you know, it's it's looking like a cultural thing for some people, but the more impact we take, the more steps we take, then the more impact it's going to have on our culture as a whole in the end. Because in the end, everyone is related in some way or form. I feel like the whole world is related, whether you're black or white, or because the world is beginning to become a global village, and the more we are connected, then the more related we are going to be anyway. So if you're making somebody else feel less about themselves, then ultimately you're making yourself feel less about yourself, because we are all a human race in the end. It's not like because somebody's from another race, then they belong to another family when it comes to the animal kingdom, because I like to think that humans are also part of the animal kingdom. So why all this inequality? Are you there, Emeka?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here. Definitely.
But I
Yeah, I
can't
can
see
hear you.
you. Can you see me?
Oh, really? Yeah, I can see you. It will fix. Don't worry.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yes,
but
that's the
I
thing,
agree with what
though.
you're saying. I think we as humans, we manufacture inequality. We manufacture, um,
Mm.
like being poor is 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 man made.
Yeah. I
All
remember
these
having
things
this
are
conversation
man
with
made.
you when you said when you said what Kanye West said about um
Oh dear.
slavery. Was it you?
Yes. But I'm just saying, oh dear, because now we now brought Kanye West into this podcast, and it could get sticky.
Yeah, I'm not even trying to make it controversial, but yeah, he said something that the black community found very, very controversial, and it was offensive to a lot of people because he touched on a very delicate part of history where he went to talk about slavery being a choice. And you actually agreed with what he said about it. I did not agree with it, but after you explained, I kind of saw reason with you, even though I don't 100% agree with what you said, but I think I get the rationale behind that school of thought, and it actually makes sense.
I think we
Because in
have
the
to
end in
explain
the
it
end
before
it's
people get
it's
so
it's all
carried
about
away.
your mindset, and he made
Mm,
references of how leaders at that point actually were selling black people into slavery. Because if you really look at it, then in the end these leaders were actually black people as well, and they were the leaders in society at that point. It was about them just saying, no, we're not doing this. If they had stood their ground, then maybe slavery wouldn't have lasted as long as it did. Because I'm not going to say slavery wouldn't have happened anyways, because um, when Africa got invaded, it was about plata or plomo, gunpowder, or if you're not taking the money, then you are going to take the gunpowder. And that's, I said it in Portuguese there because the Portuguese were probably the first, yeah, not probably, they were the first to
mm.
exploit
They were
Africa.
the first, yep.
Yeah, so it was about coercing these people to make sure they followed suit with what the colonial masters wanted at that point. So if what Kanye West said, I understand why a lot of people would have found it very, very um, disgusting, especially people who've been directly involved with slavery. Because, take for instance, there's a huge number of black people in the United States and all of South America,
Mm,
except Argentina and maybe Bolivia, where they have a very small number of black people. But everywhere else in the Americas, there's a huge number of black people, and that's because of slave trade, the transatlantic slave trade, where a lot of people got taken out from West Africa, especially Nigeria, Benin Republic, Togo, all of these places just got taken out of Africa just for them to go work on plantations elsewhere. And there's just a lot of people right now who don't even know where they are from. Ari Lennox, I don't know if you know her. She's a musician. She does good music.
I
She's
know.
American,
Yeah.
yeah. She was in Ghana, I think last year or the year before that, and I think she did a DNA test that suggested that she was from Ghana. Have you ever thought how mad that is for someone to have to rely on science? I'm not saying, okay, this is not a dig at science now, because science has actually had a lot of great impacts on society, but for someone to have to rely on science to decipher where they're actually from, I think that's a very, very mad place to be as a person. That could fuck anybody up in terms of how they see the world. Just knowing, okay, this is where you've known as home, and just knowing
Mm,
this is actually not where my folks are from. Like, I'm not feeling accepted in that society. Ari Lennox had to go to Ghana, and she was like, when she was at the beach, because that beach was where slaves were taken, like slaves passed through that beach. And she said she felt a lot of power, and she felt a lot of emotions running through her while she was walking through that beach, because she knew in her emotions that was where her folks had to go through. And that moved me, because even though I couldn't directly relate to that, because luckily, or maybe fortunately, my folks went taken out of Africa as slaves, it could easily have been me. I could have been in a situation where I don't know my roots, I don't know where I'm from, I don't. I'm just curious about where am I actually from. I think that's a very crazy. I wouldn't say messed up, but that's just how it is. It's a crazy place to be, and I empathize with everyone who's in that situation, and I hope they are able to actually find their actual roots. But I just don't believe a DNA test or something is enough to actually suggest and give you 100% accuracy in terms of where your folks have been taken away from.
I hear you. I view it a little differently. Um, I think yeah, it's nice to know where you're from, but I think it's more important to focus on where you're trying to get to.
Yeah.
There was something that I heard the other day that really stuck with me. Someone said, "You might not be where you want to be, but at least you're not where you were."
Mm.
Now, obviously, that doesn't directly apply to slavery and the slave trade and all that, but I think it's more important to focus on accepting your past rather than trying to fight it, because the only way you can really fight your past is by conquering your future, if that makes sense. I don't know if people will really resonate with what I've just said there, but the premise behind that is all you can change is the future, and the future will become your past. So if you take strides in your future to really develop yourself and understand yourself and whatever, then the sky's the limit. Because whilst I can't necessarily relate to what a lot of Americans go through as well, because there seems to be like a very similar experience happened with Lecrae. So what I'm trying to say here is, and he's a rapper in America, and he found out he was Nigerian. I can't relate to their experience, but one thing I see is that they are hyper focused on race in that country, and I just don't think in any country where you hyper focus on race that is beneficial for anyone. I think that if we want to make race less of an issue, we have to make race less of an issue, if that makes sense. Like, we just have to focus on better treating humans as humans rather than do a Black History Month or do a White History Month or do a, like anytime we paint one race as better than the other, we're not benefiting that race. Is my view. I think that we just have to treat all races like all people. In terms of like, we don't have to highlight one race for this or one race for that, or make it about someone being the first Black president or the first white woman boxer or whatever. Like, okay, she's a boxer, awesome. Okay,
Mm.
he's a comedian, awesome. I don't care if he's the first Black Chinese reggae artist that does ballet.
Hmm.
What does he do? Okay, he does ballet and he's a reggae artist. Cool. Doesn't have to be about race. The more we make it about race, the more people will be divided and the more that people will look at things through that lens. And I think that we need to be conscious of not falling into those traps, because it's a kind of never ending cycle. Like, you're never going to really get anywhere with that,
Mm.
in my opinion.
Mm. That makes sense. It makes sense.
Mm. But yeah, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for sharing your story. Just so everyone is aware, Mubarak will definitely be on future episodes as well. So don't worry, that's not the last you'll hear of him. But we just thought we'd have this episode where we focus on him directly.
Yeah,
I hope
thank
you
you,
enjoyed it,
Emeka.
bro.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure to be on the podcast with you. I've been editing and seeing how much you guys have fun recording, so it's great to finally be part of it and to actually be able to tell my story and actually be able to give my perspective to these topics as well. So yeah, we're looking forward
Mm.
to more episodes this season. By the time this episode drops, it's for sure not festive period anymore, but I hope everyone is having a great festive period right now and hope everyone is keeping safe, not drinking too much. don't get carried away with all of the madness that comes with festivity. Yeah.
I agree, man. People gotta stay safe, bro. We
Yeah. You
sometimes
as
can
well,
get lost.
you're flying back to Australia in a few days, so be safe,
I'm
bro. Be safe
excited.
out there. You excited?
Yeah, man. Take care. Yeah, of course I am. Yeah, moving to Brisbane, starting a new life, doing my thing.
Yeah.
It's gonna be good.
Actually, I always have when I travel to a place, yeah, and I'm going back,
Mm.
I sometimes have felt a bit depressed. But in your case, it's different because you're moving to a new city, so that's exciting. But if you're
Mm.
going back to Canberra, that
I
might
would
be a
be
bit
very
depressing.
depressed. 100%. All due respect to people who live in Canberra, not for me. Not for me.
What's the thing about Canberra that you don't like?
Yeah, we'll take that off air.
All right, people, everyone stay safe.
Take care, everyone. Bye.